The desert remembered every promise, but it never forgot a betrayal. On a blazing afternoon beneath a sky so bright it looked ready to burst into flames, a weathered cowboy stepped into a dusty trading post with nothing more than a tired horse, a worn leather hat, and the last $2 in his pocket. Across the room stood an Apache family, their heads lowered under the weight of shame as an angry merchant demanded payment for a tiny debt that had somehow become larger than their dignity. The cowboy had no reason to interfere. He did not know their names, their story, or the storm that followed them across the Arizona territory. Yet one quiet decision would awaken a chain of events that would forever change every life caught in its path. The young Apache girl stared into his eyes after he placed the coins on the counter, and with a voice barely louder than the desert wind, she whispered that he would regret what he had done. Those haunting words followed him like a shadow into the endless wilderness. Before we continue, if you believe the Wild West was a land where even the smallest act of kindness could change a life forever, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with fellow Western lovers, and subscribe to Wild West Love Stories. Your support keeps these forgotten legends alive. Silas Mercer had spent most of his 32 years chasing cattle across dry plains where survival depended more on stubbornness than luck. His face carried the marks of countless storms, his hands were rough from endless labor, and his heart had grown quiet after years of losing people he cared about. He had learned not to ask questions whenever strangers crossed his path because the frontier offered enough pain without borrowing someone else's burdens. Still, something about the frightened family standing before the merchant refused to leave his conscience alone. The father looked exhausted beyond words. The mother held a small bundle of herbs that seemed more valuable to her than money itself. And the young girl possessed eyes unlike any Silas had ever seen. They held fear, wisdom, and a sadness far older than childhood. The merchant laughed after accepting the $2, mocking both the family and the cowboy for wasting hard-earned money on strangers. Silas simply tipped his hat and walked outside, believing the matter had ended. Yet when he mounted his horse and turned toward the open trail, he noticed the girl standing beside the building. She watched him without blinking. Her expression carried neither gratitude nor hatred. It carried certainty. The strange warning she had whispered echoed inside his thoughts all afternoon as the desert sun slowly drifted westward. By sunset, the wind had begun to change. Dust clouds rolled across the valley in thick waves, swallowing distant hills and hiding every trail marker. Silas had crossed these lands enough times to know a desert storm could erase an experienced rider within minutes. He searched for shelter inside a narrow canyon, where towering rocks blocked the worst of the wind. As darkness settled over the land, unfamiliar sounds drifted through the storm. They were not coyotes, they were horses. A gang of outlaws emerged from the dust with rifles raised. Their leader, a scarred man named Boone Harker, had terrorized ranches throughout the territory for years. Boone smiled the way wolves circled injured prey. He demanded Silas surrender his horse, supplies, and every coin he carried. Silas admitted he had nothing left after paying another family's debt. Boone laughed so hard his men joined him. The outlaw claimed kindness was a disease that always ended in poverty. Before leaving, Boone ordered his men to beat Silas and leave him unconscious among the rocks. When dawn arrived, the cowboy opened swollen eyes beneath the burning sun. His horse was gone. His canteen was empty. Blood stained the sand beneath him, and every breath felt like broken glass. Alone in the desert, death seemed only hours away. Then soft footsteps approached. The Apache family had found him. The father, called Dakota, silently lifted Silas onto a handmade litter while the mother cleaned his wounds with medicinal plants gathered from hidden canyon walls. The young girl who had warned him walked beside them carrying fresh water. Her name was Nayeli. She still spoke very little, but the fear in her eyes had been replaced by something heavier. For 3 days they cared for him inside a secluded valley unknown to settlers. Dakota revealed that Boone Harker had been hunting their family for months because he believed they knew the location of a hidden silver deposit discovered generations earlier. The merchant's debt had delayed them just long enough for Boone's scouts to nearly catch them. Silas realized the warning had never been a threat. Nayeli had seen danger following her family and knew anyone who helped them would eventually become Boone's target. Instead of blaming the child, Silas understood she had tried to protect him. As his strength slowly returned, he witnessed a different side of frontier life than most cowboys ever experienced. The Apache family lived with remarkable discipline, respecting every tree, every stream, and every creature that crossed their path. They wasted nothing. Every meal, every fire, and every journey carried purpose. Silas had grown up hearing stories that painted native families as enemies. Yet everything before his eyes challenged those beliefs. He found kindness where others had promised cruelty and wisdom, where others had spoken only ignorance. One afternoon, Nayeli finally explained why Boone wanted her family. Long ago, her grandfather had discovered rich silver hidden beneath sacred cliffs. Rather than exploiting the land, the tribe chose to protect it, believing greed would poison every soul that touched the mountain. Only a handful of families knew the location, and Boone believed Dakota intended to reveal it in exchange for safety. The outlaw had been murdering anyone connected to the secret. Silas now understood his own fate had become tied to theirs. Leaving would save his life. Staying might cost everything. He chose to stay. Together they began moving north through forests and rocky hills, hoping to reach friendly territory before Boone's gang closed the distance. Every sunrise brought fresh danger. Every river crossing risked discovery. Every distant horseprint forced them onto harder trails where exhaustion threatened to overcome them. Days later, they encountered a burned ranch where smoke still drifted into the afternoon sky. Families wandered through the ashes, searching for anything left to salvage. Children cried over ruined homes while elderly settlers stared blankly at the destruction. Boone had attacked again. Silas helped rebuild broken fences while Dakota treated the wounded with herbal medicine. At first, many settlers distrusted the Apache family, but desperation eventually outweighed prejudice. Side by side, they repaired roofs, buried the dead with dignity, and shared what little food remained. The barriers separating strangers slowly disappeared beneath shared suffering. Word spread that the mysterious Cowboy and Apache family had stood together when everyone else had fled. Boone heard those stories too. His anger grew into obsession. Near the end of summer, Boone finally tracked them to an abandoned mining settlement surrounded by steep cliffs. The empty buildings stood silent beneath the blazing afternoon sun, their broken windows watching like forgotten ghosts. Silas knew there would be no escaping this time. The outlaws surrounded the settlement before sunset. Dakota prepared bows, while Silas checked the few bullets remaining in his revolver. The women and children hid inside the strongest stone building as dust drifted through empty streets. Silence settled over everything. Then the shooting began. Gunfire echoed between the cliffs until the entire valley seemed alive with thunder. Silas fought from rooftop to rooftop, refusing to surrender ground despite overwhelming numbers. Dakota's arrows struck with astonishing precision, forcing Boone's men into cover again and again. Every minute they survived increased the chance that nearby marshals might notice the endless echoes rolling across the mountains. Boone eventually cornered Silas beside the old mine entrance. The outlaw mocked him for risking his life over strangers who belonged to a different world. He insisted compassion always ended in tragedy. Silas answered without anger because experience had already given him the truth. Hatred destroyed everything it touched, but kindness could outlive even death. Their final struggle sent both men tumbling toward the unstable mine. The old support beams collapsed. Rocks crashed downward with deafening force. Silas barely escaped the entrance. He believed his path had reached its end. Silas prepared to continue his wandering life. The sacred cliffs kept their secret. When the dust settled, lawmen finally arrived after following the distant gunfire. The surviving outlaws surrendered without their leader. Peace slowly returned to the valley. Autumn painted the desert with gentle shades of gold as the silver deposit buried beyond recovery vanished with him, while Boone disappeared beneath the mountains forever, carrying the same calm expression she had worn the day they first met. This time there was no warning, only gratitude. She placed a small hand-carved eagle into his palm, explaining that among her people it represented someone whose courage protected others without expecting reward. It was worth almost nothing to merchants, yet priceless to those who understood its meaning. Silas realized the greatest treasure he had found was never hidden beneath mountains of silver. It had been trust earned between people divided by fear. Years later, travelers passing through Arizona often spoke of an aging cowboy who helped anyone in need regardless of where they came from or what language they spoke. They also spoke of a peaceful Apache community that welcomed lost travelers with clean water and honest friendship. Few realized those stories began because one man chose to spend his last $2 instead of looking away. If this story has touched your heart, please like this video, leave a heartfelt comment, share it with someone who believes kindness still matters, and subscribe to Wild West Love Stories so more forgotten tales of courage and compassion can live on. Special request: comment with the words, "Kindness never rides alone." If you believe one small act of compassion can change countless lives. As the golden afternoon faded across the endless desert, Silas looked once more toward the distant mountains, where the wind carried whispers only the land could understand. He finally understood what Nayeli had meant all those years ago. He had indeed regretted paying that tiny $2 debt, but not because it had brought suffering. He regretted that he had almost ridden away without helping at all. Had he ignored that struggling family, he would have spent the rest of his life with a full pocket and an empty soul. Instead, he discovered that the greatest legends of the Wild West were never written by the fastest guns or the richest men. They were written by ordinary people whose courage to choose compassion transformed strangers into family and turned a forgotten act of mercy into a story that would echo across the frontier long after the dust had settled.